Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, if we begin to take seats, please, we're going to begin services in just 2 minutes. Rabbi's schedule will permit them only to wait until 10 after to begin services, so we can kindly take seats so we can begin services. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
We learn in the book of Psalms. As a father has compassion for his children, so may Adonai our God have compassion for all of the family and friends of Sherman Bannett who we come here to remember today. God knows how we are fashioned. God remembers that we are dust. Our days are like grass. We flourish as the flowers of the field. A wind passes over us and we are no more. But we trust that God's compassion is everlasting. God's kindness to children's children endures age after age, unchanging. We continue our service with Psalms, thus linking Sherman's life to our ancient tradition, to the Jewish people, and to the eternity of God.
Shir Lamalot Esaina Eharim Me'ain Yavo Ezri Me'im Adonai Ose Shamayim Va'aretz Ayitein Lamot Raglecha Al Yanum Shomerecha Hine Lo Yanum Velo Yishan Shomer Yisrael Adonai Shomerecha Adonai Tzilcha Al Yad Yeminecha Yom HaShemesh Lo Yakeka V'yareach Balayla Adonai Yishmorcha Mikol Ra Yishmor et nafshecha Adonai Yishmor tzedcha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam.
Psalm 121, a song for ascents. I lift up my eyes to the mountains, from where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your protection, a guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm and will guard your soul. Adonai guards your going and coming, now and forever. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, binodesha yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yinahaleni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech begates al mavet, lo irara ki ata imadi, shiftecha mishantecha hema yenachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai, dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi revaya, Ach tov v'chesed yerdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti beveit Adonai, la'orech yamim.
The Hebrew words just recited are the words to Psalm 23, a psalm which we know so well from settings such as this. And many of you, I'm sure, know it from memory, so recite with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. At this season of the year, we are counting the Omer, counting the days between Passover and Shavuot. For 49 days, we recite a blessing and count the day. Today is the 20th day of the Omer. It is a doubly sad day, a sad day for all who knew and loved Sherman Bannett, and a sad day for all of our people, because today is Yom HaZikaron, the day when Israel remembers its fallen soldiers and citizens. But as much as we note our losses, the truth is that the counting of days with a blessing for such a prolonged period must make us conscious of the blessings in our days. Sherman Bannett was blessed with 90 years of days. So let's hear from members of his family about the blessings in his days and how he made his days a blessing to family, to friends, patients, colleagues, and community. Greg?
Many of you know that I'm an emotional speaker. I won't apologize because, after all, he was a big giver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Blessed are you, our God, King of the universe, who has kept us in life, has sustained us, and has brought us forward to this precise moment. Not a joyous moment, but this is the right moment, and for that, I bless. I use this particular nusach to remember that 52 years ago in Haddon Heights, right about now, I stood on the bima before my proud parents and grandparents, Rabbi Lewis, and many of you here, and many here in spirit, to become bar mitzvah, May 13th, 1972. To everything there is a season. Abraham Joshua Heschel said that dying on Shabbat is a gift that is merited by piety. For God to take your soul on Shabbat Kedoshim, this past week's Parsha must signify an even more special degree of holiness. And after all, the Parsha starts with Kedoshim tihiyu ki kadosh ani Adoshem Elokechem. You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. The very next line is Ish imo ve'aviv tora'u. Hold your mother and your father, and I'm going to translate it, in tremendous awe. Certainly we together with our father had abundant opportunity to fulfill this commandment this past Shabbat and in the weeks and years leading to this day as we navigated with our dear father together the end of his days here on earth. I find it significant that the aurora borealis opened the night skies over so much of the world as my father's soul ascended to Shemayim. Dad was a consummate teacher, and to the end he was teaching us crucial lessons. I would like to discuss qualities of our father that he possessed which taught us in the most effective way, by example. Many direct commandments arise from this week's portion, and as I read them, I think of how consistently and seriously my dad applied and exemplified these principles in his own life. Sherman Bannett was honest and fair. He never tried to take advantage of anyone to gain false personal advantage. He treated people fairly as a leader of his department and hospital and in the routines of daily commerce and exchange. His scales were honest. He kept his commitments, and he judged fairly and charitably. The central tenet of this parsha, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your fellow as yourself. Many say this is the central tenet of Judaism and the essence of being holy. I think that Sherman Bannett incorporated and exemplified this particular commandment in all aspects of his life. He looked for places where he could make a difference and lift people up. When he came to this community, people, for the most part, needed to travel to Philadelphia for complex interventional radiology. He found that unacceptable and took it on himself to learn the skills from luminaries at Penn and Einstein and Jefferson and bring those skills to southern New Jersey, establishing a catheterization lab and building a service. By making diagnosis of vascular emergencies available locally, he opened the possibility of vascular surgery closer to home, saving crucial time and saving lives. His commitment and his vision was central to the elevation of community hospitals in this area to true diagnostic and treatment centers. While he did this, he always taught and transferred these skills to younger physicians. He loved to sit in the X-ray reading room, to hold court with the young doctors of all specialties discussing, debating, and teaching the fine points of radiologic diagnosis, long before CT and MRI, back when you had to be Sherlock Holmes and a clairvoyant at times in order to give the correct diagnosis. I've been speaking to and hearing from numerous doctors relating stories of how he cared for and helped them in their education and careers. He assumed leadership in the hospital and healthcare system, becoming chief of staff of the Kennedy Hospital System, serving on the board of trustees, helping to build the system, which is today Jefferson of South Jersey. He was instrumental and very involved in the establishment of the first medical school in South Jersey, when back then it was the College of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, and it's now the Virtua Rowan School of Osteopathic Medicine. Because of these fine institutions, we enjoy a medical community of depth, breadth, and abundance, making our region a wonderful place to live with great medical care. In the Jewish tradition, it's said that you should not live in a town without a doctor. Thanks in large part to our dad and others who shared his vision, you probably can't live on a street around here without a doctor. Nationally, Dad was involved with the College of Radiology and served as the president of the American Osteopathic College of Radiology, where he formed bonds with his allopathic brethren to advance education and advancement across the country. Love, family, integrity, resilience. These are values that defined our father. He cared about everybody. He loved to connect people. If he knew anybody in the world with your last name, he would ask you if you knew each other and if, on the off chance that he could help a meaningful connection. The same is true about your school or your hometown, and it was amazing how many of these seemingly random connections bore fruit. Others will speak of his incredible devotion to family. It was his central focus. Our mom and all of his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren meant everything to him. The same is true of his lifelong friendships. We had so many aunts and uncles it took decades to know who were biological relations, but it didn't matter. May and Siggy, Auntie Em, Natalie and Al, George, Minna, of course Uncle Rodney were central to our lives. Of course, Barry and Judy held a very, very special spot. I've never seen two brothers who were more involved in each other's every day. And throughout these past years, I do not know how he would have managed without Uncle Barry's support. Dad was the kind of person who would do anything for those he loves, and also do a lot for those he didn't even know. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Another lesson I learned is that to truly love another person, you have to let that person love you. It's so important to be reliable and eager to help, and it is such a joy. It's also a joy to allow others to help you. When he was ill, his doctor, friends, and family, like Jerome, Richard, Steve, Abe, Jane, Barry, and of course Sheldon, all played important parts in helping Dad, and have all referred back to me as to how he had helped them at one time or another. I've learned that the chance to pay back lends dignity to both the giver and the recipient. You will hear the story of Uncle Rodney's shoulder. We've all been that shoulder at times, and Dad has provided that shoulder to us. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your neighbor as yourself. Do for others. Let them do for you. If others can rely on you, you can rely on them. Do your best. It will be good enough. Share. Feed your guests. The gesture matters. If you have a lot to give, give. If you have little to give, happily give anyway. Cheerfulness, optimism, hope. These were my father's values. Dad could leave this world knowing that he made a difference to his family, his friends, his community and synagogue, his profession, and the world. As I finish, you may notice that I've not even mentioned the elephant in the room. He did this despite experiencing paralysis from polio that could have rendered him helpless and that would have been excusable, except not to his parents and not to him. We will have time to discuss today and over Shiva the particulars of how nothing could stop him, how he overcame every roadblock up to his last day, and how he did it with cheer, positivity, and concern for all around him. Maybe that was how he did it. If you can love and do for others, others will love and do for you, and then you do not bear your burdens alone. For Dad, once was never enough. Dad talked in threes. How are you, Dad? Good, good, good. And as you ended almost every conversation, as you said goodbye, I love you, I love you, I love you. It's big.
Thanks. Thank you for all being here. It's hard to know where to start because there is so much to say. As you've heard and undoubtedly will hear, Dad was an amazing man. He'd always tell us about people and things from the past, and yes, tell us the same stories over and over and over again. All right, now I lost my spot. I know this sounds familiar to my kids, but you should know I learned from the master. Well, I know Dad got the same here we go again eye rolls I got when I started talking about how things used to be. I'm not starting with when Crescent was a dirt road. No, just Dad's very simple. When I was a little boy. Dad always tried to make things fun and make sure we learned something in the process. We'd drive to Grandmom and Grandpop's house on Woodbine Avenue in Philly regularly. We'd cross the Ben Franklin Bridge and cut through Fairmount Park. He'd always point things out and teach us the names of roads, rivers, bridges, some history, or whatever, all while singing, you guessed it, over the river and through the woods, to Grandmother's house we go. He loved to have us keep him company when we were kids. As much as we were normal, busy kids, and he was busy with his career and, of course, had to do a little desk work, pay a few bills, he always made sure he found time to spend together. He loved having us take rides with him to his favorite store. Anybody remember Corvettes? And if we were lucky, a stop at Edmunds Scientific, where he'd buy us an experiment kit to learn from and do together. He also loved to have us come to work with him when he had to go on Sunday mornings. He'd point out things on x-rays in hopes of teaching us something, even though all we really wanted to do was play on the dictaphone and leave messages for his transcriptionist in our scratchy little voices. I mean, how many 10-year-old kids know what cardiomegaly is? Jerry? For those who didn't know, Dad could stand and walk while we were growing up, but only when he was wearing a brace that kept his right leg stiff. Despite that, he always figured out ways to be involved with our activities. We would have a catch. I had to be really accurate, or I'd have to go chase. Go deep sea fishing. He would grab onto my belt while he was fishing at the same time because he was afraid I might go overboard. We'd go camping and canoeing, and it wasn't his fault the canoe went over, was it, Bear? And of course, we played duets. He on his clarinet and me on my trumpet. Some thought it was amazing watching him do some of those things that he did, but that was our dad, and we weren't surprised at all. There never seemed to be anything he couldn't do. Most importantly, it was about doing it together. He showed us how to find the positive in almost anything. As we got older and he started to lose the use of his good leg, he started to use a cane. Soon he needed to use two, and then he developed a hobby. He collected canes with fancy handles. He learned how to get through many less than accessible restaurants and joked that his disability allowed him to, quote, see the kitchens of many fine restaurants in Philadelphia Philly. That was the only way they could get him in. And once he became a full-time scooter user, he could actually tell when somebody saw that he saw somebody with mobility issues and that person was curious. So he would go over to them and talk to them and give them advice on what kind of scooter to get and why it was important to do it. He was helpful and generous to a fault and always helped others. He knew he had challenges, but there were many out there that in his mind had bigger challenges than his. He recognized that, learned from that, and was there for anyone in need. And of course, Dad was so proud of his accomplishments, but most of all, proud of you guys, everybody that's in the front rows here, everybody, his friends too. With the incredible partnership and love of our amazing mom, Dad taught us all by his example what was important in life: family, friends, education, and to treat people with respect and kindness no matter what a person looked like, where they were from, what they believed, or yes, even if they walked a little funny. I learned about the kind of son, brother, husband, dad, and overall person I wanted to be by watching Dad in action. He never went to bed angry, always kissed us and Mom hello, goodbye, good morning, and good night, and always made sure that he said, I love you. Dad, sleep well. Love you, love you, love you.
So now we're going to bring up the grandchildren. Jeremy, Harrison, Jonah, Joshua, Zachary, Adina, Benjamin, Gabrielle, and Jillian.
Thank you all for being here today. I think this array of wonderful human beings alongside me is the single best tribute to Grandpop that I could think of. You'll hear from a few of us, each speaking about different ways that we connected with Grandpop, but I get to go first because I had the great pleasure of being Grandpop's first grandchild. They only got better from here. It was a truly incredible blessing having Grandpop in my life for 37 years. As I reflected over the last few days on all of Grandpop's amazing qualities and was continuously struck by the ways in which he directly influenced generations of our family. His beliefs, his principles, his personality quirks, and most of all, his loves. All of them live on in his kids, his grandkids, and now his great-grandkids. And I know will live on Le Dorvador. I wanted to share a few sneak peeks into Grandpop from a grandchild's perspective. You've already heard some of these themes, and you will likely hear some of them again. And that's the first thing that Grandpop passed down, the Bannett proclivity for repeating ourselves. The second thing Grandpop passed down was his love of learning. He was a lifelong learner who could and did weigh in on a wide variety of topics, including politics, history, Judaism, and of course, medicine. He loved to tell stories about people he knew, and no story was complete until he shared where that person went to college, what they majored in, and their significant professional accomplishments. In fact, while some people believe that life begins at conception, others believe life begins at extraction, Grandpa believed life began at graduation. His passion for higher education rubbed off on his descendants. All of us completed or are on track to complete college, and all are lifelong learners. Another thing Grandpa passed on was his love of nature. Grandpa was a photographer and a keen observer of the natural world, especially at the shore. He taught his kids and grandkids how to identify birds and fish. He and I spoke often about our shared love of trees, and he enjoyed many adventures on the water. He greeted every spring with a poem. Spring has sprung, the grass has riz. I wonder where the Boides is. Some say the Boyd is on the wing, but that's absurd. The wing is on the Boyd. He raised 2 generations of scouts, campers, hikers, and nature lovers, and we all convene every summer at the shore to see the ocean from there, to smell the salt air, and to marvel at all the life in that bay. Grandpop also passed along a deep love of music. He encouraged all of us to play instruments, and more importantly, he instilled in us an abiding appreciation for music. He took us to children's concerts at the Philadelphia Orchestra, played us CDs and videos of Leonard Bernstein and Yitzhak Perlman, brought us to see musicals on Broadway, and even served as my research partner on a paper I wrote about jazz in the 7th grade. We all carry Grandpop's love of music with us today. But most importantly, Grandpop shared with us his unrivaled love of family, which spanned family past, present, and future. Talking with Grandpa for any amount of time almost guaranteed a story about previous generations. One of my favorite memories is when Grandpa and Gran took Shoshana and me on a tour of West Philadelphia, where Grandpa grew up. I remember how happy he was showing us all of his family landmarks, the spot where the store on Lansdowne Avenue once stood, the schools that his mother and cousins attended, one of which I was teaching at the time, which was cool, the home that his father built on Woodbine Avenue, the shul where he became a bar mitzvah. He loved passing these memories on to the next generation so that our family history remained part of the family present. And when it came to family, no one was more present than Grandpop. He and Gran were singularly dedicated to the beautiful family they built together. Every grandkid up here can tell you about the special, undivided attention that Grandpop gave to them. He never missed anything. Holidays, shows, sporting events, big or small, Grandpop was there. Another way he was present was by simply having fun with us. He took us to museums, restaurants, shows, even a special trip to Disney. His love of family fun caused what was perhaps the most embarrassing moment of my life, when he thought it would be fun to take me to see Scary Movie as a 13-year-old. I admit I was nervous about the prospect of seeing a horror film with my grandfather, but as it turned out, I didn't need to worry about that because Scary Movie was not a horror film, but was actually an incredibly bawdy parody of a horror film. As each victim in the movie met their untimely demises in increasingly obscene ways, I sunk deeper and deeper into my seats, but Grandpop just laughed harder and harder. Yes, something we laughed about together for many, many years. And while not all of us had that particular brand of fun with Grandpop, we all carry on his love of fun and family. Lastly, Grandpop's love of family continued from past and present into the future. When Shira and Judah came around, the best Grandpop in the world became the best great-grandpop in the world. And I got to enjoy watching him pass all of his loves directly onto them as well. He had the opportunity to share his love of learning and his love of family with Shira last year when she did a school project on family history, and Grandpop was her primary source. Grandpop shared his love of nature, always making a point of showing the kids the deer in the backyard and pointing out the carved birds around the house. Shira and Judah have both adopted Grandpop's love of music. He was so proud of their piano playing. Just a few weeks ago, the children played for him at Lionsgate, and you could see him beaming. He was always so present and fun with them, playing Go Fish and Bingo, and always laughing and smiling and instilling his love of family. In fact, for years, whenever we would ask the kids, what's your superpower, Shira would always answer that her superpower was family. Yesterday, Judah told me that he, quote, wants to be happy like Grandpop, and Shira told me that, quote, he was a big leader and a role model, and I want to be like him. I really loved him. And that about sums it up. We all really loved Grandpop, and we were so grateful and lucky to have had him in our lives. Grandpop, we will carry with us your love of learning, nature, music, and most importantly, your love of family, past, present, and future, and so much more. Thanks for all of these gifts. We love you.
In true millennial fashion, I'm going to read this off of my iPhone. Thank you. I do know how to work it still, thank you. Grandpop and I had a special connection. I was the first of his grandchildren to go into medicine. Zach, Jordan, Adina, and I don't know, Ben, maybe, are joining me in this field, so I'm putting a few thoughts down for them as well. I was fortunate enough to know Grandpop well while he was working. Grandpop would take me to the radiology reading room at Kennedy Hospital and show me dozens of radiographs. I was also his patient when I was 9, when I had a hairline fracture of my elbow, which nobody could find except for him. And I was also at his retirement party from Kennedy. Much of the advice I got from Grandpop was recycled from my dad. It worked the first time, so why not try it again? My favorite will always be the quote, you can always do research with a medical degree, but you can't practice medicine with a PhD. When I was deciding on going to medical school, I kept putting off the MCATs year after year, and he was the one who told me to just take the damn test and see what happens. For me, he helped me find my love of medicine. For Adina, he helped her find occupational therapy as her path, in which she is now pursuing a doctorate. For Zach and Jordan, he was their biggest supporter to pursue their post-baccalaureate education and move on to medical school. Jordan has been accepted to medical school, and he was so proud of her. When Zach was in high school, he told him that if he applied his brain to school like he did sports, he'd be at Harvard. Grandpop remembered this just a couple of weeks ago and was proud that you were finally taking his advice. Zach is applying to medical school this upcoming year, and as a Yale man, I think you can do better. Grandpop always knew we were ready before we did, and he had faith that we would do well. He knew when to gently guide us and when to push us to pursue our goals. Over the last decade, Grandpop and I spent hours talking about the practice of medicine, what it takes to train as a physician, and about healthcare as a whole. My grandmother and my wife would be smiling while rolling their eyes, asking us boys to talk about something else for a change, which we could only manage to for about 10 minutes, much to their chagrin. He had a passion for teaching, and he taught me so much about being a doctor and a person. It was truly a joy to go through medical school and residency and learn from people he taught or interacted with professionally. It's always wonderful to hear the memories that my teachers and patients had about my grandfather. I know his legacy lives on. I'm so glad that he lived long enough to see me finish my training and join my dad in practice. He got to see the third generation of Drs. Bannett, And that is really, in his words, terrific. We love you, Grandpa.
So I was going to open with a joke about how I'm a teenager reading this off my phone, but Harrison stole that. Said it's because he's a millennial. Also, to honor Grandpop, I will be repeating this 3 times. If you interrupt me and tell me you've heard it before, I'll say, oh, and then continue to repeat it. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jilly. I'm the youngest of Sherman's grandchildren and the youngest of the youngest child, Gary. I'm not the youngest by much because my twin is 2 minutes older, but it's still the youngest, so I'm taking it. I'm not going to cry. You may know the man we are here honoring today as Dr. Bannett, or Sherman, or Sherm, or Dad, or just as mid as husband. But to me, he's my grandpop. Pop always loved the things you've heard others talk about today, like music and medicine and nature and the like, but one thing he put above all else was family. Grandpop had been a source of comfort, care, and fun for all of the grandchildren throughout our lives. He'd take the splinters out of our feet after he explicitly told us not to go outside without shoes on at the beach house, or bring us to the aquarium or Please Touch Museum whenever we stayed with him and Gran. He would sit us on his lap and bring us for rides in his cart, singing Yankee Doodle the whole time. And he'd tell us stories about from when he was a little boy, about the summer camp he attended for polio victims and the fish tanks he had in his parents' house, and about his love of learning, whether it be medicine or the clarinet. When I was in kindergarten, Pop came to my school for some career day event and spoke about being a radiologist. He brought in a bunch of x-rays and explained to the kids what everything was and all of the fractures, and I was so, so proud to be his granddaughter, and I still am. He also retired decades before this, so I don't know whose x-rays those were. So if you lost scans of a broken arm in the late 2000s, I'm really sorry they're gone now, but some 5-year-olds in Lawrenceville had a great day. Pop always encouraged his love of medicine, too, for all of us. You can see by everyone in the medical field here. I thought he'd be excited earlier this year when I told him I signed up for anatomy class to learn about bones, just like he did. And he explicitly said, "Jilly, do not do that. You will get squeamish." He was always looking out for us. Pop never let anything stop him either. I didn't realize that other kids' grandfathers could walk until I was in elementary school. But he never made it a constant setback. He would still drive, still visit, still bring us on trips with him, no matter the obstacle. Just an hour before Pop passed, some of the grandchildren and I stood around his bed, tearfully watching him and telling him how much we loved him. I started thinking we should get a grown-up in here, until I realized that all of us are grown-ups. We're all adults now, even the youngest of us, and Pop got to see that. And he saw all of us grow up and was there for every step of the way. He was there for graduations and recitals and performances and sports games and competitive marching band. Where's Ben? Competitive marching band. And whenever he couldn't attend the events, he would wait eagerly for us to tell him about it and show him photos. Grandpop and my gran cultivated a tight-knit family based on not just their love for us, but their love of loving us, and have since passed that down. His sons have passed it down to their children, and now we, as their children, are passing it down to the next generation, his great-grandchildren. His never-ending love for us and his family as a whole is what made the Bannett family an actual family. He's the reason we are all here in general. His love made us, and we're all made with a part of that love still in us. We now have the gift, honor, and duty to pass Grandpop's love down for generations to come. Love you, love you, love you, Grandpop.
I'm Gary. I'm the other brother. And I'm overwhelmed at how many people are here today. So thank you all for coming. You are all part of our family and this network of support that our parents built. I want to give a special quick thanks. I'm more emotional than him. To my brothers and my Uncle Bear, who really shouldered the last year or so of very hard work to help Pop get to the next level. I owe you everything. So this one's going to be a hard one. Normally I'd start with something witty, like, I don't know how he got his scooter up there, but guys, Dad's on the roof. See how I did that? This time I'm going to go a little more philosophical. The great philosopher Woody Allen once was asked about his position on death. His response was, officially, I'm against it. When pressed further, he said, death, there's nothing wrong with death, because death is like a colonoscopy. Because with a colonoscopy, you get an injection, you're out, it's peaceful, it's black, you're calm, it's nice. And so death is like a colonoscopy. The problem is that life is the prep day. Now, for a lot of people, that would be true. But not for Dad. He was the eternal optimist. We actually used to joke that not only did he view life through rose-colored glasses, but he actually owned a pair. Most likely prescribed by Greg. And with that attitude, he had a wonderful life. For a man who was faced with such adversity, starting at 3 years old, contracting polio in 1937, he could have been the type of person who considered himself a victim, but not our father. He was a fighter from the beginning. He had something to prove. Those of you who knew him knew this. Throughout the Shiva, we will recant stories, and if you missed them, Barry will repeat them. But he was not a man to ever take the easy way out, and almost never made concessions to his handicap. As a child, he had to live with braces on his legs, and with the love and hard work of his parents and his uncle, they acted as physical therapists to build him back to strength, to the best he could be, which still included wearing a brace. He did things, and you've heard from, this is hard to follow, guys, it really is. You've heard, he did things like play sports, music, marching band, swimming across Tom's River, learning to drive with hand controls, valedictorian of his high school graduating class, med school, got married, raised a family, and that included me, and that was not easy. It also included Andy Riesenbeck, and that was not easy. Became a successful doctor, influenced the lives and careers of many in this room, with his strength, wisdom, kindness, generosity, and always with a smile on his face. I would like to talk about something from my perspective and some of the things I experienced for a minute. See, Mom and Dad built for us what many would perceive as an idyllic life. We are all very close, and we're lucky to have each other. And they instilled that in us. He loved boating. He had 3. Fishing, LBI, going to the beach, even on crutches, clamming, swimming, eating, music, the opera. None of it meant anything if we couldn't do it with friends and family. He hated to be alone. We inherited that from him. I can't go to CVS without one of the girls. They built an extensive network of very close friends and family who we had and shared these experiences with. All of them, aunts and uncles. UB, Aunt Judy, special place. And Annie M., Aunt May, and Dr. Landis. I did that for you, Mark. Uncle Al, Aunt Nat, so many, many others, too many to name here. They have become relationships that are currently spanning generations. The latest example for me being the friendships of our children with the Landis children. So two groups of grandchildren that have been very close. Go Revolutionaries. Through all that, watching him pilot his boat or swim in the sea or pick clams with his one good foot, I didn't realize he was handicapped. It never occurred to me. Not for a long time, because that's not how he lived his life. I remember the first time in my lifetime he had surgery on his good knee. And I came home from college to visit, and he was in a wheelchair. And I had never seen that. And I said to my mother, "Hey, he's pretty good on that thing." And Mom said, "Dummy. He was in a chair as an adolescent, and he hated it, but he did it." And then I said, "He gets around the house so easily." And Mom said, "Dummy. Uncle Barry designed that house just for this purpose, with wider hallways and ramps and ease of access, preparing for the future. A handicap-accessible house in 1970, I truly had no idea. I had no idea. I just thought it was a ranch house. But why didn't I realize? Because he never let it stop him or define him, ever. His activities as a young man, pursuing his academics, something that defines him, you've heard. A very successful career as a physician, and you've heard some of that already. Pursuing and quickly finding the love of his life, our mom, where they had 60 wonderful years together. Building what was most important to him. His family, this group of people right here, and all of you. And look at what they achieved. I still can't believe this room is filled. He was a remarkable and wonderful son, husband, father, father-in-law, brother. He might have been a little rough. Grandpa, great-grandpa, uncle, cousin, and friend to all. He took on the role of patriarch and took it very seriously, always offering help, giving advice and guidance to whoever he asked. I'd like to share some of that advice and guidance, or gems of wisdom, that he shared with us, and that we've passed down to our children, and that he's repeated over and over and over again. Apply the seat of the pants to the seat of the chair. That meant study. He would often ask, "Do you want to earn your living with your brain or your brawn?" Also study. When things were rough, God forbid we should miss a meal. Eat brings us together. Or, I never met a potato I didn't like. Also, eat. You see a theme here? My all-time favorite, only assholes wear shorts in our nation's capital, David. But what he meant by that was show respect. Especially to our nation's capital, Barack. There are many more, but you get the idea. He was always teaching us to focus on our family, to work hard, to be loving, to be respectful, to be smart, to be kind. But to me, he was more than that remarkable man I described above. He was my hero. Many of you thought it was Uncle Al. Al was my kindred spirit. Dad was my hero. And foundationally, all I wanted was his approval, for him to be proud of me, to learn his lessons. Sometimes I worked really hard for that approval, and I feared I didn't have it. Sometimes I might have rebelled a little against it and worked just as hard to do things that got me into a little trouble. Right, Andy? Right, Scott? Took a lot of late-night talks with Mom, and more recently, time spent with Dad and Greg and David and Bear, to learn that he was proud of each and every one of us, even you, Bear. He loved you. And while we all know I was Mom's favorite, Dad never picked a favorite. I didn't really understand that until very recently. In his last days, we would talk through each of the family members, and he was assured that each and every one of us, of every one of you, quote unquote, will be fine. I'm not worried. He would say that to me. He did his job, along with Mom. He built a family. His guidance and influence allowed him to watch his family grow big and strong, seeing 3 of his grandchildren married, to meet great-grandchildren, to see more doctors and medical professions you've heard about, and doctors-to-be, to see careers start, to see recently an engagement, and to see many of his grandchildren start their journeys off to college, all of whom will do fine. He's not worried. I'm almost done, I promise. So getting back to life and death and Dad's relationship with it, I was wrong. You can write it down. May 13th, I was wrong. Originally, I thought he feared death, and that's why he fought so hard this last year. And it was a challenging year. And why he survived Mom for more than 6 years, which I don't think any of us expected. He'd gone through his colonoscopies, and he had his prep days, so he knew. He just never wanted life to end. He was fighting hard because that's what he does, because he was optimistic that there was more good to come, and there is. I realized this most recently when Uncle Bear called Uncle Rodney, yet another uncle, Dad's oldest friend who lives in Hawaii. And Rodney wrote back to Barry and commented on Dad's final days, saying he knew Dad would not fold up his tent and go quietly into that good night, quoting Dylan Thomas. He knew his old friend, maybe better than I did. And so, with that big giant smile of his that could light up a room, he knew he was loved, and he passed peacefully, surrounded, I don't know if you know this, by everybody. There had to be 18 people in that room. We were all there, his family. We toasted him with shivas. We put a little on his lips. So, Dad, here's to you, bud. And in his own words, from his many hours in the radiology reading room, viewing x-rays, I'll end with, period, paragraph, end of report.
Thank you to all who have spoken. In your words, we clearly see how your father and grandfather made his days count as a blessing for you and for so many. And yet, there is more to say, and I will skip most of it. We spent 2 hours yesterday together, and I have extensive notes and a full eulogy, which I will not give. Just a little bit here to conclude. The psalmist says, Limnot yamenu ken hoda v'navi levav chachma. Teach us to count our days that we may acquire a heart of wisdom. Notice, wisdom is not simply about knowledge. It's not only about the head. It's about the heart, a heart of wisdom. Sherman put all of his heart into his family, into his friendships, into his work as a physician, and that's how he made his days count. And that's how he made his days a blessing. But he also made his days count with community, especially TBS, Temple Beth Shalom. I have here the family file. We keep files. It's full of letters dating Sherman's involvement with the congregation. August 27th, 1964, Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bannett, it's my pleasure to welcome you as new members to our Temple Beth Shalom family. That was signed by David J. Levy, who was president at the time. And on the same day, there's a letter from Rabbi Lewis. We hope that your new association with us will result in spiritual and cultural benefits to you. How many services and programs did he attend through which that was fulfilled? How many simchas did your family share with TBS, the TBS family, bar mitzvahs, confirmation, graduation from Midrashah, weddings, all documented. And Rabbi Lewis's letter went on, please feel free to call upon me in any way I can be of help. There are condolence notes on the loss of Sherman's father and mother, recommendations to college for you, Greg. It's all here in the file, including, guys, your Hebrew school records. It's good that you say that. How's that Hebrew reading coming along? I know how much TBS meant to Sherman and how much he considered his involvement to be a blessing to his days. I also know how much he was a blessing to the congregation. There's a plaque in the vestibule of TBS as you come through the front door. It's on the right. You might not notice it. It's a very important plaque. It says, this site was acquired through the generosity and vision of the following people, and 12 couples are listed. Third on the list, Sherman and Minna Bannett, September 25th, 1974. What a blessing that day became for TBS. The move to the new building didn't come until 1989, but it would never have happened without those 12 families who had the vision and the commitment to acquire the land. And he was part of that. There are a number of letters congratulating Sherman on committee and board positions in years after that visionary acquisition. And then April 11, 1977, a letter nominating him to the position of vice president. Other positions for many years after that, many years of days. The file also celebrates his professional accomplishments. January 30th, 1980, Mazel Tov on your appointment as chief of staff at Cherry Hill Hospital. Another, Sherman Bannett was elected president of Camden County Society of Osteopathic Physicians. We even have a picture of him at that time. But here I'm going to add a personal note. I saw Sherman at many services and congregational events and family simchas over the years. And what I will remember the most is his warm greeting. The way he shook hands, often taking mine in both of his. That big smile that was always there. And also how he enjoyed the banter when Barry was with him, and they would joke about introducing each other to me. Have you met my brother? 6th time, 7th time. We did that routine so many times, and it never failed to make us laugh. And when I had heard that Sherman passed away, I thought about how I would miss that. And then when I came into the house yesterday to prepare for today, Barry, you greeted me by saying, have we met? I'm Sherman's brother. And immediately the mood became lighter, and throughout our 2 hours together, there was a lot more laughter than tears. And I suspect that that's the way it will be with all of your memories of him. his strength of character, his determination, all of those values you listed, Greg, his accomplishments, the way he encouraged you to all, children and grandchildren, to do and be your best selves, his love for family and friends and community. Those recollections will all bring smiles to your faces. He made his days count in so many ways. And so his memory will be a blessing to you, to all of you, and for all of us, for all the days and the years to come. Zichrono livracha. We rise for a final prayer.
מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים חמצה מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת ישעיה מנדל בן יוסף לייב וכן קבלה שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו אנא בעל רחמים הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן
Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Sherman Bannett who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace from your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. You may be seated. From here, we will head to Locustwood Cemetery for the burial. After that, the family will be sitting Shiva at Sherman's home, 1815 East Fireside Court in Cherry Hill. There'll be minyanim there each evening this week, Monday through Thursday at 7:30 p.m., and also after Shabbos ends on Saturday evening at 8:50 p.m.
Rise once more, please.
Season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time for planting and a time for uprooting, a time for hurting and a time for healing, a time for tearing down and a time for building up. time for throwing stones, a time for gathering, a time for embracing, and a time for refraining. A time for seeking and a time for losing, a time for keeping and a time for letting go, a time for ripping and a time for sewing, a time for speaking and a time for silence.
You may be seated, please. So that's we can kindly remain seated, please, just for a moment.